Page 294. Okay. Just for the Torah Anytime people, if you have anybody has any questions or questions, please, you can email me at Dovid B. Kaplan. Dovid B. B is in baseball, badminton, basketball, and water polo. Feel free to ask any questions. Dovid B. Kaplan, you can email me any questions. Okay, 294. Doesn't mean I have all the answers. I just said you can email me the questions. Doesn't mean I'm going to answer. So page 290. It's not recording?
It's recording.
It's recording. Oh, that was clever. Okay. So yesterday we were speaking about the backbreaking labor. We got to move. I want to cover some ground today. It says in Pasuk Yudalet, it says Vayomoru es chayeyem ba'avoda kosha. 5 lines on the top. They embittered their lives with harsh labor, bechomer uvenim, with mortar and with bricks, v'chol avoda basada, and working out in the fields, as kol avodasam asher avdu ben befarach, all the labor that they put up to this harsh labor. So the Mefarshim ask over here, why does the Torah go into such detail about the various forms of labor they engaged in? Why does the Torah say they made them do a lot of hard work? Why, you know, it's kind of wordy over here, right? That the Torah goes through the chomer v'ovenim and everything that goes through. So the one of the Mefarshim says, you see, there is a concept called in life called kol hascholos kashos. All beginnings are difficult. When you begin a new job, it's very challenging. Nisim, is that door closed over there? When you begin a new job, it's always challenging getting adjusted. When you get to yeshiva at the beginning, it's difficult. As you go on in yeshiva, you see it just becomes more difficult. But when you begin marriage, it's difficult. When you first have your kid, it's difficult. All beginnings, anything new, anything novel, anything new that you take on, there's something called kol hascholos koshos. The beginning is challenging. It's, even if you're excited, you've graduated college and you got your first job as an accountant or a lawyer, and you're all excited, but then you see that right towards the beginning, all of a sudden you didn't realize this, and I got to do this. I didn't understand it was going to be so much of this, and everybody's expecting you to do this, and you find out you run into a lot of adversity in the beginning. Getting used to marriage is the same way. You thought it was going to be easy, and then you find out all of a sudden there are things that are expected of you, like not thinking only of yourself. Right? Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah. And when you have a child, all of a sudden you realize, wow, a child, wow, that's exciting until 2 o'clock in the morning when you got to get up, and then get up at 4 in the morning, and then at 8 in the morning, and then, and then you got to go to work, and you're falling off your feet, and that's the 3rd day in a row that you haven't had a night's sleep. So all beginnings are hard. So what they did was, to the Jewish people, they kept switching people's jobs. First you're working with the bricks, now you got to work with the mortar, now you got to work out in the field, now you got to work this. They kept switching people around, so they're constantly at a new beginning. That's part of the ploy. Part of the ploy to make it harder for the Jewish people, that they're constantly switching jobs. Number one. Number two, the commentaries say, why didn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu just bring us straight into Eretz Yisrael? Why did we have to go to the Egyptian exile to begin with? We're going to the Egyptian exile, and what do you call it now? And they, for 210 years, it's actually less than that because it didn't start till after Yosef died. But it's the 130 years really of harsh labor after Yosef dies. But whatever it is, why do we have to go through this? And the answer is because if you go straight into Eretz Yisrael, you wouldn't appreciate it as much. Like anything else in life that you have to earn. And after the difficulty of being in Mitzrayim, then you get to go into Eretz Yisrael, you appreciate Eretz Yisrael more. And not only that, it makes being exiled from Eretz Yisrael more difficult. That's why the exile hurts us so much, because we're exiled from Eretz Yisrael after having earned Eretz Yisrael, after appreciating it. Hold all the questions till the end. After having appreciated it, we now have a greater appreciation. Now exile hurts even more, which is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants, because then we're yearning to get back to Eretz Yisrael. And we're the only people who constantly, you don't find that Italians who've left Italy are yearning to go back to Italy. You don't find that Irish who have left Ireland are going back to Ireland. You don't find people from Indonesia helping to go back to Indonesia. So we're always calling, go back to Eretz Yisrael. There's always this thing about Israel, about Eretz Yisrael. Even Jews who are far removed from Judaism, there's that loyalty to Israel. Right? There's a loyalty to Israel. Why are we yearning? Is that we constantly davening that we should return to Yerushalayim and return to Tzion and return to Eretz Yisrael? And that's part of what's involved in this Egyptian exile and all the difficulty that we go through in the Egyptian exile. Part of it is this idea of creating a yearning and appreciation for Eretz Yisrael, which is where we are today. Now, skip down to Pasuk Chaf Aleph. Pharaoh tells the midwives that he wants them to start throwing Jewish babies. He wants them to kill the Jewish babies. There are 2 midwives. Shifra and Pua, who are really Yocheved and her daughter Miriam, according to one opinion. There's another opinion in the Gemara that's Yocheved and her daughter-in-law Elisheva, Aaron's wife. There are different opinions who these two midwives are, but according to most, it's Yocheved and Miriam. That's the standard of it. Shifra and Pua. They're by named Shifra and Pua, and Pharaoh wants them to kill the babies as they're being born. And the midwives are going to go. Now, there were more than two midwives, because you talk about a large Jewish nation. So, according to some of them, unfortunately, they are They're the head midwives, right? They're running the midwife organization. But whatever the case is, Pharaoh calls them in. He tells them to kill the babies, and they refuse to do it. And then Pharaoh says, "Why aren't you doing it?" And they give them a reason. They said that the Jewish women take care of the birth. By the time they get there, it's too late. The babies are born already. And then in the Torah, in Pasuk Chaf, it says, "Vayitav Elokim lamiyaldos." Hashem does good to the midwives. Bottom of 294, 2 lines at the bottom. Vayire va'am vayatzu, the people increase and multiply. The next pasuk says, "Vayihi ki yoru amiyaldos es Elokim," because they feared God. Vayas lahem batim, He made houses for them. And Rashi says, if you look at the left column of Rashi, 3 lines from the bottom. Please show the person next to you if you find it. When you find it. Left column of Rashi, Vayas lahem batim, says Rashi, Bate Kehuna v'Levia u'Malchus, the houses of Kehuna, Levia, and kingdom. Kohanim, Levim, and kingdom. Shekruyin batim. Where do you see that? And Rashi explains where we get that from. Kehuna v'Levia miyocheved. Yocheved is the one who ends up having Kehuna and Levia coming from her, from Aaron and Moshe. Is Kohanim and Levim. Those are the descendants. Moshe was a Levi, Aaron was a Kohen. Umalchus mi Miriam. Miriam is Mary's Kalev, who's from the tribe of Yehuda, and from the tribe of Yehuda comes eventually the Davidic kingdom. So, obviously, ultimately, it's from Yocheved also, because she's Miriam's mother. But at the end of the day, Yocheved has her 2 children, Moshe and Aaron, which is the line of Kohanim and Levim. And Miriam is then going to get married to Kalev, who's not Yocheved's son, and that's where the Davidic line is going to come from. Now, there are 2 questions here. Question number 1 is the previous pasuk says, "Vayitav Elokim lamiyaldos," He did good to them. Vayiravam vayasu, the people increased and multiplied. This sounds like that was a reward. And then it says, and when God saw, because they feared God, He made these houses for them that would come from them, which that's the reward. So question number 1 is, which is the reward over here? B, why is that the reward that they get these houses of Kehuda, Levi, and Malchus? 2 questions. So the answer is that in the first time it says, Vayitev Elokim lamiyaldos, that's not the reward. When you invest in any project in life, anything you try to accomplish, and you work at it, and the more you invest of yourself, especially if you're moser nefesh, that means at great risk and self-sacrifice, when you see the fruits of your labor, that's a tremendous sense of satisfaction. Here are the women who are trying to save the Jewish babies, and what do they see as a result? Vayire va'am vayasu, the people increase and multiply. There's no greater satisfaction. There's no greater satisfaction for a doctor than doing surgery and saving the patient's life, and then getting paid a lot of money, right? There's no greater satisfaction. But the real satisfaction is you saved the patient's life. When you got involved in something, you got involved in a project, anybody who's ever tried to build an organization, and it went slow in the beginning, and you had a fundraiser, and you finally succeeded, there's a tremendous sense of satisfaction. When you raise children, and if you raise children, and believe me, the Gemara even uses an expression, tsar gidul banim, the difficulty of raising children. Children put parents through the ringer. That's tsar gidul banim, the difficulty, the getting up with them at night, and then the aggravation, and this kid doesn't do well in school, and this kid, gets involved with the wrong friend. There's all sorts of aggravation. There was some guy once came to a rabbi, he said to the rabbi, "Boy, I can't take this tsar gidul banim. I can't take it. This kid is driving this." And the rabbi said to him, "That's not tsar gidul banim. That's not the difficulty of raising children. That's just raising children. Wait till you get to the difficulty." Right? So you got all these things, and then you succeed with your children. There's no greater satisfaction. It was an investment of time and energy in kishkes. You put your kishkes into your kids. And you see that it finally succeeds. That finally, wow, the kid is, you more or less succeeded. You kept him out of prison. That means you're what he got a tremendous sense of satisfaction. I'm obviously being facetious. He probably did spend some time in prison. But at the end of the day, you succeeded with the kids. So any project. So what's the number one? The greatest benefit is they're trying to save Jewish babies. And the Jewish people increase and multiply, vayitav. That right there is good. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives them a reward. That's just the benefit. Now it comes the reward. What's the reward? You're going to have these homes. Jewish kuna liva malchus. Now we know that everything HaKadosh Baruch Hu does is what's called mida keneged mida, which means you get I think in secular it's called quid pro quo. You get what you've earned. There's a parallel. The reward is always a parallel. Somebody who gives a lot at tzedakah becomes rich. Right, so that's what it's called, measure for measure. Somebody who gives a lot at tzedakah gets rich. Somebody who, what do you call it? Somebody who invites guests into his home, so then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will reward him with a rich uncle will die and leave him a big home. One way or another, or he won't die. He'll just buy him a rich a home. One way or another, you get. In HaKadosh Baruch Hu's, the way he measures it out, we'll see this all the time in the Torah. You see Miriam, later in the Parsha, Miriam waits for Moshe Rabbeinu by the water, and therefore when Miriam, later on in the Torah, when she has tzaras, the entire Jewish people wait for her. And that's Mida Keneged Mida. And whatever you do, what goes around comes by pace. So the question that commentaries ask over here is, what's the Mida Keneged Mida over here? Why is it that this was the reward for the people? Maybe you saved Jewish life. Maybe the reward should be they should live long. Right? Why is this the Mida Keneged Mida? And it's a brilliant answer. You know what the answer is? Let's say they wouldn't have saved the Jewish boys. What would have happened? The Jewish girls would have grown up. They would have married Egyptian men. They would have had children, but those children would be halachically, the children would be Jewish. The only problem is you wouldn't have any Kohanim, you wouldn't have any Leviim, you wouldn't have any kings. In other words, the Jews would survive, but Jewish pedigrees wouldn't survive. Is that what called a pedigree? To be a kohen is a pedigree? I will call it a pedigree. A pedigree is to be a kohen. I'm not quite sure if it's called a pedigree or the status. Status wouldn't survive. Judaism, Jews would survive, but the various different statuses. I'm guessing that's the word. I don't know. So what, right? Well, if there's a hippopotamus, there hippopotami is plural, so status is stati.
Specifically like a super pedigree, like a status.
A status, right. I don't know. There's probably a word for it, but that wouldn't have survived. That's what they saved. That's what they were rewarded. That's what they didn't save Judaism. They didn't save Jews. They saved very special status among Jews. And therefore, that's the reward that they get. Okay. Now, page 296. So there's an intense decree. Vayitzav Paro l'chol amo lemor, kol haben hayilod hayorot tashlichu. Any son that's born, chuck him into the river. V'chol habas techan, keep the girls alive. So the Medrash says that the Egyptian astrologers, they saw that the Jewish Redeemer is going to be born and that he's going to have some sort of setback when it comes to water, involving water. Now, what happens with the astrologers is they see, but they're not sure what they see. They only see Jewish Redeemer and problems with water. We find later on that Moshe Rabbeinu, there was a setback where when he hits the rock, instead of speaking to the rock with the water, that's what he gets punished. He doesn't go into the land of Israel. But they don't know that. And that's why as soon as Moshe Rabbeinu is going to be put into the water, they call off the dogs. That's it, the degree, because they see that Moshe is in the water. They see astrologically that the Jewish Redeemer is now in the water. There's no point to throwing in any more children because which is what Pharaoh is concerned about. That's why he's trying to avoid the Redeemer, and therefore Pharaoh says everybody into the water. Okay, that's the decree. Now we pick up where the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu. Vayelech ish beis Levi. A man goes from the house of Levi. Vayikach es bas Levi. He marries the daughter of Levi. Now, the fact that it says Vayelech, he went, means that he went against Pharaoh's decree, and he goes and he marries the daughter of Levi. And it doesn't say who he is. It doesn't say who she is. Later on, we find out this is Amram and Yocheved, Moshe's parents. Why doesn't it say it right away? Why does it say Moshe Rabbeinu that Amram becomes? So first of all, it could very well be that this is done incognito. That part of it, the fact that it doesn't name them is that it's done on the sly. But one of the ideas here is that who's eventually going to come from here? The greatest man in Jewish history. That means any parents potentially could have a child who's going to be the Gadol Ador. They're Moshe. No, I didn't say Moshe Rabbeinu. But any parents could potentially have a child who's going to be the leader of the Jewish generation, or he's going to be one of the great Torah scholars of the generation. And we find this through history that there were great Torah scholars and we don't know anything about the parents. They obviously had some sort of merit. And so here's a man who goes, and the Torah doesn't even name him. He was the Gadol Ador, by the way. Amram was the leader of the Jewish people. But the Torah doesn't name him at this point. And they have a child, Vatahar Ha'isha. I've told you that the word Vatahar means she became pregnant. And the root of the word Vatahar is mountain. Vatahar, har is a mountain, because a woman, when she becomes pregnant, she becomes mountainous, right? Mom's like Jiffy Pop, right? And Vatahar Isha, I don't know how they survive it. I'll tell you, between me and you, I don't know how they survive it. You got to go 9 months. I mean, it is so uncomfortable. I'll tell you, you can't get a good position. We're trying to sleep, and there's a certain point where the baby's pressing on the bladder with all that involves, and in the beginning they are nauseous. And by the way, guys, you've heard about morning sickness. I got news for you. It's not limited to the morning, right? It could be 24/7 for 9, right? We're sticking at a 24/7 9 over here. It could be. It's usually not 9 months. It usually goes away after the first few months. Although I do know a couple of women. I know a couple of cases, 2 cases for sure, and I think there's a third one that I know for personally, that women that had to be hospitalized in the beginning of pregnancy because they were so nauseous they couldn't even keep down water. So they have to go on a drip in the hospital just to make sure they have enough nutrition. Yeah, it's great fun. So, and then the husband says, well, she's never in a good mood. Yeah, well, try it, boys. Now, by the way, they can also sleep about 20 out of 24 hours a day, constantly tired. Great fun. So it says, Vatara Isha Vateled Ben, Vatira Oso Kitovu. She sees he's good. We got Kitovu. She sees he's good. Vatitzpenehu Shlosha Yerachim. She hides him for 3 months. Now, the Moshe Rabbeinu is born, and Rashi says over here, Kitovu, that she saw in the right column of Rashi, right in the middle of the column. It says, Kitovu kshenolad v'nismale habayis kula ora. The whole house filled with light when Moshe Rabbeinu was born. Which is really answering a question. You see, Rashi says he was born, and she couldn't hide him. She saw he was good, so she hid him. And she tries to save him. I understand. And if he wouldn't have been good, she wouldn't have tried. Every mother loves her child more than herself. Every mother would try to hide a child. What's the chiddush over here? You mean because he was good, that's why she tried to save him? And if she wouldn't have seen the light, she wouldn't have tried to save him over here? What's the answer is that what she's attempting to do, which runs against any sort of realistic chances, she feels there is a chance, because obviously there's something special about this kid. Any mother would do what she does. Any mother would, but she feels that there's actually a chance. We'll see what she does. She couldn't hide him anymore. I want you to pay attention very carefully now. V'lo yachlo od hatzvino, she couldn't hide him. Vatikach lo tevas gome, she takes how does he translate, wicker? A wicker basket. Vatachmera bachemer uvazofes, she smears it with, how does he translate it? Clay and pitch. She puts him in, and she puts the basket at the edge of the Nile River. Now, if you look at Rashi, why does she put, I want you to see the Rashi inside. First of all, it's 6 lines from the bottom on the right column of Rashi. I want you to see this inside, gentlemen. So what's gome? Rashi says, Gemi, Loshon Mishnah, V'dover rachu, it's something soft. Wicker is softer than, a stiff piece of wood. Ve'omed bifnei rach ubifnei kosher. Because the wicker is soft, so it could withstand something soft and something hard. In other words, if you put something in that's too rigid, a strong force will crack it. Whereas this wicker, the nature wicker, is it's flexible, it bends. So if the water starts coming at him hard or soft, the wicker could bend. The wicker is flexible, number one. And then it says, B'chemer uva zefes, zefes mi b'chutz. The tar was from the outside. What did we say, pitch and what? Clay. Sorry, the pitch is on the outside. And the clay is on the inside. That means she puts clay on the inside because clay doesn't smell as bad as pitch, and he's going to be on the inside. So there are several lessons here. I want this to get clear. First of all, that's what she's worried about, what it smells like inside the teva. And again, this is a normal mother. What does she do? She wants that. Listen, she's putting them on the Nile where there are alligators and hippopotami, right? And she's putting them on the Nile where there's wind and it could capsize and turn over. And goodness knows, 101 things could happen that he's not going to survive. Yet if I can make sure that it doesn't smell bad, I'm going to do that for this, my little baby. Right? That's the nature of a mother, number one. Number two, this idea of being flexible. So I want to tell you a piece of Gemara. You've heard of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, right? Bar Yochai, nimshachta asrecha. Okay, so Bar Yochai is from the Lag BaOmer story. Okay, so Shimon Bar Yochai had a son named Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar, he was in the cave with him. And there's a Gemara in Tainus, Maseches Tainus, it's around Daf Chav, Chaf Aleph, Chaf Beis, around there. The Gemara says he was once coming home from yeshiva, and he was riding. And he was in a great mood. He was high. He was, he figured out the Gemara. He understood what sorry atbasa means, and he figured out the Gemara. He was buzzed up from learning. You ever get a good Gemara buzz? There's nothing like a good Gemara buzz. So he's buzzed up from learning, and he's on his way home. He's on his way home from yeshiva, and the Gemara says he sees a man who's really ugly. He's this ugly man, and he looks at this man. This man says, "Hey, Shalom Aleichem, Rebbe. Shalom Aleichem, Rebbe." The man says to him. And Elazar looks at him, he goes, "Wow, are you ugly? Is everybody from your town as ugly as you?" Oh my God. So the man said to him, "Well, you got a problem? Go talk to the Creator who made me." So at that point, the Gemara makes a very strange statement. The Gemara says, when Rabbi Elazar, at that point, he realized he insulted the man, so he asked the man to forgive him. Which is strange. I mean, up until that point, he didn't realize. You say, "Hi, boy, are you ugly?" Oh, did I offend you? Sorry, I didn't. I didn't know. No, I didn't mean it personally. I mean, what does that mean? When he realized that he offended him, so then he apologized. And the man said, "I'm not gonna apologize till you go to the Creator and you complain to him." And Rabbi Elazar finally followed him till the town, and all the people of the town came out to greet Rabbi Elazar because he's one of the Gedolim. And this man said, "Who are you greeting?" And they said, "The guy behind you." They said, "Well, everybody's like him." I forgot what he said. Nobody should be like. He says, "Why? What happened?" He said, "You know what he said to me?" They said, "Well, just forgive him anyway. Just forgive him anyway." He said, "Okay, but all of your promises not to do it again." And the Gemara says, we learn from there, "La'olam yehadam rach kekane." And what does the word rach mean in Hebrew? Soft like a reed. Don't be stiff, don't be hard like a cedar tree. Now, reeds are not soft. I'm going to use the word, I don't translate rach as soft. How do you translate rach? Flexible. Be flexible like a reed. Be flexible like a reed. Now, what does that mean? First of all, let's answer the first question. Why did Rabbi Elazar say it, and why didn't he realize that maybe he's offending him? The answer is, the commentaries say he wasn't referring to his physical appearance. I don't know if you've ever seen, sometimes you go into a shul and the rabbi walks in for mincha and some guy, "Hey, Rabbi, how you doing, Rabbi?" There's a certain flippant, people relate to the rabbi flippantly. It is not derech eretz to greet a rav first. It's not derech eretz. It's a breach of proper Jewish Torah etiquette to be the first one to greet the rav. You could say, nod your head or say hello. But you don't start saying, "Hi, how you doing? How's the wife and kids? What's going?" And you're not he's a rav, and you're not on the same stature. When Rebbe Elazar, the guy says, "Shalom Aleichem, Rebbe." He said, boy, are you ugly. He wasn't referring to the physical. He was saying he's referring to the man's etiquette, his behavior. He says, wow, is your behavior? All the people, that's why he said, are all the people from your town ugly? What does that mean? Sometimes you see an ugly person, doesn't mean everybody in town is ugly. He's saying, did you come from a place where nobody ever learned derech eretz by you? So the man took it personally. That's why Rabbi Eliezer said, oh, well, he realized he insulted him, meaning that he probably didn't even notice that anyway, he's thinking about what a guy looks like. He realized at that point that the guy took what he was saying the wrong way. That's how the commentators explain the Gemara. Okay, so the Gemara says you should be flexible like a reed. What's Moshe Rabbeinu's role going to be later on in the Jewish people? He's going to be the leader of the Jewish people. When you're a leader, when you're a rabbi of a community, any position of authority, you're going to deal with all sorts of people. You got to deal with all sorts of people. And you got to learn to be flexible. You got to learn. Now, there's a difference between a reed, by the way, the nature, and the Gemara says this. What happens to a reed? Picture a reed in the water. A reed is standing up. The wind starts blowing the reed back and forth, and the reed moves. It's flexible. But once the wind stops blowing, where does it end up? Right where it was. An oak tree, it could be tough. Sorry, a cedar tree. But if there's a too strong a wind, it just cracks the tree. I mean, you could be tough, but eventually you're too tough. You're gonna find somebody tougher who's gonna just crack you. So the Torah said, the Gemara is saying, you gotta be flexible. Be flexible with people, and be flexible when sometimes, a situation comes up, and you just give way a little bit, but it doesn't mean you're changing your principles. You're right back to where you are. Sometimes you run into people who are critical of what you're doing in yeshiva. Doesn't have to argue with everybody. Sometimes just kind of, like kung fu, right? You ever see that they used to have a show on TV, Kung Fu, David Carradine, when I was growing up. It was great. It always, of course, obviously, there's at least one fight in every other who wants to watch it. But I just remember, guy takes a swing at him. That's why I was enchanted. And he didn't do any of that because he just, he would just kind of very gently, throw people around. And every once in a while, a guy would take a swing at him. He'd just move his head like the guy go flying. He wouldn't touch him with the swing. I don't know anything about martial arts. I don't know if it's real. But the guy winds up and hits him, and all he did was go like this. The guy missed him completely, went flying, and then he just kind of shoved him into the fire or the wall or whatever it was, and like that. So the what do you call it? Flexibility doesn't mean you're giving up your principles. Moshe Rabbeinu is going to be. This is a prediction for the future. She's putting him in a reed. This is the future leader of Klal Yisrael. This is his personality. This is personality. He's going to be in this teva out in the water. And you're going to be the leader, from the very inception. We'll see more in a second. And therefore, she puts him on the edge of the river. Now, the Medrash says that what happened was, when the decree came out, why does it make a point of saying Amram married Yocheved, and he has Moshe Rabbeinu is born? Yeah, but before he married her, he already had two children. He had Miriam and Aaron. So why does it now say that he went and married her again? The answer is because he divorced her. When he heard Pharaoh's decree, he divorced his wife. So his daughter Miriam, and then when he divorced his wife, all the Jewish men divorced their wives because he was the Gadol Hador. Which, by the way, shows you, look at what they did. Look at the loyalty to the Torah leadership. The Torah leader divorced his wife, so everybody divorced their wives. And what does that eventually lead to? That leads to the redemption. Everybody's obeying, you follow the leader. Amram's daughter, Miriam, says, hey, Dad, I want to tell you, why'd you divorce Mom? Well, Pharaoh decreed that all the boys got to go in the river. So, well, your decree is worse than Pharaoh's decree. Because Pharaoh's decree is only on the males. Your decree is on the males and the females. Nobody's going to be born. Not a bad argument, right? Not a bad argument. So what does he do? He says, hey, she got a point. So he remarries his wife. And when he remarries his wife, now he has the child. And now there's a decree, and now they got to put him in the back because they're still pursuing him. They're still pursuing the children, so he goes and his mother puts him on the Yaor. So I told you last time, to put him into the Yaor, the chances of survival are almost nil. Too many things happen. I think I told you in the Nile, what do they have? They have crocodiles. Right now they have crocodiles, and they have what do you call hippopotami, and they have wind, and there are reeds, and probably snakes, and goodness knows what could happen to the baby. And what's that? Bugs, and it's who knows, sunstroke if it's a hot day. Who knows what could happen? It's got no water, and 1,000,001 things could happen. By the way, there's a medrash that says she felt she was never going to see his marriage, so she built a little chuppah and put a chuppah into this body. Isn't that interesting? She made a chuppah. I mean, why a chuppah? Why do you put a chuppah? The answer is that when you raise children, the ultimate point, the point where you feel you've done the job, your job is over. It's never over, by the way. But at the point that you feel, okay, we did the job, is when you take your child to the chuppah. When you marry your child off, they are now building their own home. You've done your job as a parent. Your job was to get them to the chuppah. Then your job after that is to keep giving them money. Right? And by, that's still part of the job. And then your job is to have the grandchildren come into the house and make lots of noise, right? Which is the nachas that you get. There's no better noise than hearing grandchildren coming into the house, and then the best part of it is that you spoil the daylights out of them and let your kids chase them around. That's the best part of it. So the job is to get them. The truth of the matter is, and I hate to say it this way, to get them to the chuppah, to get them married is not hard. To keep them married is the challenge. That's the hard part. To make sure to keep them married. People say, well, I got to get married. Yeah, you got married. Married is one day. Married is one day. It's one celebration. The marriage celebration is nothing, right? It's the chuppah. It's staying married that's the challenge. Right? That's the challenge. Okay. Now look at what the next pasuk says. Vatesatzav achoso meirochok l'deya ma'yaselo. His sister stands at a distance to see what's going to happen to him. The word vatesatzav means to stand firmly. That means Amram was upset with Miriam. That's what the Gemara says. Because Miriam said, hey, Dad, you're going to have a child with Mom, and he's going to be the redeemer of the Jewish people. And Amram kissed her. And then when all of a sudden they got to put him in the Yaor, they got to put Moshe Rabbeinu into the Nile, Amram got upset. He said, so what happened to your prophecy, girl? Nah, I thought this was going to be the Redeemer. Now we got to go put him in the river? So Amram was very skeptical at this point. Yet Miriam vatesatzav, she stands firm. What does it mean she stands? She stands firm with her original prophecy. Meirachok, from a distance. Meaning, as difficult as it is to believe that this is going to happen, but she believes it's going to happen. It's distant. I can't believe how this is going to work out. Vatesatzav meirachok, as unlikely as it is, but I believe it's going to happen. And then the unlikely happens. Vatered bas Paro lirchotz al hayor. The daughter of Pharaoh, how do you like that? The daughter of Pharaoh herself comes down into the Yaor. She sees this little basket. She sends off. The word amasa has two meanings. Either her maidservant or her hand, her arm. Now, if it means a maidservant, the commentaries say, Basya bas Paro, we find out later her name is Basya, she obviously had a whole entourage. She had a whole entourage of servants with her. But when a queen went bathing, it's kind of indiscreet for her. She's going into the Yaor to bathe. It's indiscreet to have a whole crowd around while she takes off her clothes and goes into the Yaor. So what they used to do is they used to send everybody away. One would remain with her. She shouldn't be totally unattended. But when she goes into the Yaor, she sees that basket. She doesn't want anybody around. So she sends her maidservant, that's why it's in the singular. She sends her maidservant, the one last one, she says, you go away also. I don't want anybody to see what I'm doing right now. That's one opinion. And everybody knows the famous, what's the other famous opinion? Her arm extended. Her arm extended. That means that the teva, the basket was, by natural law, was out of reach. And she extends her arm, and it stretches out, and she's able to pull in this basket. Now, we learned two things from here. I remember I told you we spoke about this how strange it would be if you saw me trying to reach that clock. You know, guys, that clock is off over there. Let me just reach it. Like that. Now, one of two things happens. Either I can't reach it, or my arm stretches out and it does reach it. Either way, we got a problem. Because if I was trying to reach it from here and I can't, then you guys would slowly but surely, one at a time, get up and leave the room, right? And you'd go up to Rabbi Geffen. You say, "Can we talk to you for a second about Kaplan? There seems to be an issue." Okay, that's alternative number one. Alternative number two, if my arm did stretch, so the first thing you do is you would make sure that your wallets are firmly placed in your pockets where I can't reach them, number one. And number two, what was going through my mind? It's the first time I don't have this, I have a back scratcher at home because I cannot reach it with my hand. So I use a back scratcher. It's never stretched, I'm telling you now. You got to use a piece of equipment. Now, what made me think that I could reach that clock? And all of a sudden it stretched. It's like, hey, Zawi, right? Basketball, anybody? Right? I could jam standing on my feet. This is terrific, right? So at the end of the day, what was going through our mind? As we say in Gemara jargon, Nate, what was her Havamina? Right? What was the Havamina? What made you think this was going to happen? The answer is we learned a Musar lesson. Somebody needs help, try. Try. Don't assume you can't do it. Do you ever hear these stories about like a kid's trapped under a car and the mother goes and picks up the car and gets the kid out of the car? Right? Or she couldn't do it again if she wanted to. Somehow, who knows? The adrenaline is there, siyata deshmaya. Right? Who knows? There's just an incident now. A guy drove a car off a cliff in California. He went down, about 70 meters? Him, his wife, and two kids. They went down, there's a road in California where cars go off this cliff all the time. And he went down 70 meters, the car landed, somehow went down, I don't know if it went down the hill or went down, just fell straight down. Not one of them got killed. They got cracked up, they took them to the hospital, they're all alive. Then the follow-up was that the guy had been trying to kill them, been trying to commit suicide and kill his family. Guy couldn't even commit suicide, right? Yeah. How do you like that? They say he's under arrest. When he gets out of the hospital, they're arresting him for apparently there's a history in the house also. There's some shtick in the house going on also where he wasn't apparently, his mitos needed some working on. So they suspect, I didn't know this. The first time it just looked like this miracle, this terrible stretch of highway where cars go off. Apparently he was trying to kill everybody. And he didn't. Didn't work. How do you like that? That's a bad day, right? So how do you like that? So she sends out her hand and she takes it. Now watch this. This is absolutely remarkable. Vatiftach vatireu es hayeled. She opens it up. V'hinei nar bocha. Child's crying. Vatachmo ola vatomer miyaldei ivrim zeh. He's a Jewish child. So we said yesterday that she knows he's a Jewish child because he's circumcised, and Pharaoh had put an end to the decree of circumcising, which Yosef had invoked, and so that's why she knows that he's a Jewish child. There's a Hasidish vort. One of the Hasidish masters says, this is obviously not the plain meaning, but there's a lot of depth to it. She says she saw him crying, and she said he's a Jew. So the Chasidim, they say, you know why? How does his crying indicate he's Jewish? It is because Jews cry differently. That means others cry, and it's a cry of total and utter despair. When a Jew cries, even in a Jewish cry, there's still that touch of hope. Jews cry differently than everybody else. It's a nice vort. It's not the pshat in the pasuk, but it's a nice vort. A Jew cries. There's never a despair. The Jews cry, but we cry with there's always a mixture of hope in the cry. Somewhere deep down, there's a mixture of hope. But what date was this, gentlemen? According to the Gemara, let's make a count. What day was Moshe's birthday? The 7th day of Adar. Okay, the 7th day of Adar. This is 3 months later. Okay, Adar, Nisan, Iyar. This is 3 months. Sivan. If you go from the 7th day of Adar till the month of Sivan, 3 months, what day is it? The 6th day of Sivan. What happened on the 6th day of Sivan? Something very significant, gentlemen. What happened? No. Yeah, the Torah was given on the 6th day of Sivan. It's the 6th day of Sivan when she opens up this teva. And she looks into this teva and she gets a revelation of the Shekhinah like the Jewish people got at Har Sinai. Wow. And that creates her metamorphosis. She opens it up and whoa! Like Harry Potter looking into a pensive, right? Yeah, whoa! All of a sudden, never mind. All of a sudden, if you don't know, that's better. I shouldn't even said it. All of a sudden, she opens it up, and there's a revelation of Hashem's divine presence. And that has an effect on Basia Bas Paro, and that's where her whole entire transformation takes place. That's where the transformation, her entire metamorphosis takes place, and it's the 6th day of Sivan. So now she decides, now watch this. Let's go back to Amram. There's a tremendous, the Stipler says, Amram decided not to have children. And his daughter says, well, that's not your place. God says you should have children. There's a decree. That's not your issue. You let God run his world. You have to do what you're supposed to do. That's why the Gemara in Brachos says that King Chizkiyahu got sick. And Yeshaya Hanavi came to him and said, okay, say your final prayers because you're going to die soon. And he says, why? He says, because you didn't get married and have children. And King Chizkiyahu said, sure, because I saw prophetically I'm going to have a son named Menashe who's going to be an idol worshiper. So Yeshaya Hanavi said to him, Behade kavshe derachman Allah malach. Why are you getting involved in God's running of the world? You had a prophecy, you had a ruach, whatever it is. You had you saw that you're going to have a son like Menashe. What's it got to do with you? You're told to get married and have children. What's it got to do with you? How God's going to run the world? What are you getting involved in God's plan for? God, He'll run His world. You do what you have to do. Don't go be so smart. So Chizkiyahu said, okay, then let me marry your daughter. Maybe that'll help. So he does. And he has the son Menashe anyway. But you do what you have to do. Amram's daughter said to him, hey, Dad, what are you worried about? You're worried because there's a decree? What's your mitzvah right now? Your mitzvah is to get married and have children. Let God run his world. And look what happens. And then you end up with a Moshe Rabbeinu. And look what Pharaoh does. Pharaoh is trying to circumvent God's plan. You see, astrologically, there's going to be a redeemer. Pharaoh takes every possible step to prevent the Jewish redeemer from coming along. And what happens? His own daughter saves him and is raised in Pharaoh's palace, sitting on Pharaoh's lap. Could you imagine Pharaoh's holding this little adopted child and saying, hey guys, any news on the Redeemer? Right? And there he is, he's a shh, just 1 second. Any news about and there he is, he's got the Redeemer on his lap. Right? That means if God wants the plan to come out, it's going to come out under you can do everything you want, you can stand on your head and spit nickels. Nothing's going to help you if there's a plan. And our job, you do what you have to do. Let God run his world. That's what the lesson is over here. Okay, now watch this. One more point. Now his sister's been watching this. And it says that she had her Egyptian nursemaids there, and Moshe Rabbeinu wouldn't nurse because these were idol-worshipping women, and the mouth that was going to talk with Hashem was not going to be defiled by nursing from an Egyptian woman. Vatomer achosel bas Paro. So the sister says to Paro's daughter, Ha'elech ve'korasi lach isha menekes v'ina ivrios v'tenik lachas hayeled. Should I go call you a Hebrew woman to go nurse the child? Vatomer lo asfaro lechi v'tel cham v'tika seim hayeled. So Paro says, no, she calls the mother. How do you like that? Vatomer la bas Paro. So bas Paro says to her, 4 lines from the bottom, Hey lichi es hayeled azeh ve'nikiu. Take this child and nurse him. V'ani etein eschorich and I'll pay you. Okay, if you insist. What a job. Something that you want to do and you get paid for it. It's like being a professional athlete. You get to play baseball and you get paid for it. More money than anybody on the planet. How do you like that? Best job I ever had, gentlemen. The best job I ever had? Best job by far. I mean, besides Ohr Somayach, obviously. This isn't a job. This is a pleasure. Besides Ohr Somayach. Best job I ever had was when I was about 19 years old. There was a gym. I used to go play. The gym was open for men's basketball twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And the guy running the gym didn't feel like being there. So he asked me if I would do it. So what did my job involve? Well, I used to get there on time anyway, and I would help break out the rack of basketballs anyway, and I'd stay till the end anyway. And then the guy said to me, he wants me to open up the gym, bring out the rack of basketballs, and then at the end of the 2 hours, put them away and lock up the gym. And I got paid for it. It was the best job I ever had. I told people I'm a professional basketball player. I get paid for playing basketball now. I was doing it for free. No, best job I ever had. The best job I ever had. I had a guy once, a friend of mine. He wasn't here. A friend of mine from the neighborhood became a Baal Tshuva. What was his job? He was a sports writer for I think the Washington Post. So he told me what his job was. He used to fly into his city first class, stay at a 5-star hotel, go to the game, sit in the press box where they brought him beer and donuts all night, watch the game, and then after the game for 2 minutes he would take out his laptop and he would write, this one had 27 points, so there was a little fight, an altercation, blah, blah, blah. Press the button, send it off, head to the airport, fly first class again to the next city where it's a 5-star hotel and watch a hockey game this time or a football, whatever, in the press box with donuts and beer. So I said to the guy, you left that? You gave that up to become a Baal Tshuva? Right? He gave up that job? I said, that sounds like a great job. He said, it was. I said, is it still open?
Let me out of here.
Hey, listen, like the dream. Here's the mother of the child. Every mother of the child dreams of nursing her child. And she gets paid for it now, right? That's a dream job. Okay, to be continued. Okay.